I think you've got to really understand the impact that you want to have. What do you want people to say at your funeral? You know, what like think about your own eulogy.
Yeah.
What is your essence? What do you want people to talk about? And be that person at home and at work. But the problem is you don't have to choose one or the other, but there's different ways to be fully passionate about your work.
Welcome to Gap to Gig, the show for dads navigating the in-between season when work, identity, and priorities start asking different questions. Here we talk about what that season looks like and how to move through it with intention. I'm your host, Michael Jacobs, and today's guest has spent his career studying something most of us feel but struggle to explain. Why do some people love their work and others quietly dread it? Dr. David Shar is an international speaker, consultant, and professor at the University of Maryland, where he teaches graduate courses in talent development and organizational change. His research focuses on why people fall out of love with their work and how to rekindle that spark before burnout sets in. Long before the PhD, though, David ran a small ice cream shop in Baltimore, and it was there that a young employee once told him the shop was her quote unquote happy place after a devastating loss. That moment reshaped how he thinks about work, meaning, and belonging. David, I'm excited to chat with you today. Welcome to the show. Really glad you're here.
Yeah, so glad to be here. Thanks so much.
My pleasure. So let's start with that ice cream shop. Can you take us back to that moment in the ice cream shop? You said you had a young team member who told you that the shop was kind of her happy place after experiencing a devastating loss.
Yeah.
What do you think she meant by that, and why did that comment stick with you?
It definitely stuck with me, and as your listeners are mostly dads,
Right.
uh, uh, it this moment it felt extremely similar to the moment that my first child was born, and I'll explain. So what happened was I had this ice cream franchise, and we had so much fun there, and it was a Cold Stone Creamery franchise, so it wasn't just ice cream. We were also singing for tips and dancing, and I had a banana costume in the back that both my crew members and my family would dread me bringing out. But but we had a ton of fun, and it definitely was a happy place. But I think that the comment was about something much deeper. So this was in the heart of Baltimore City, and a lot of my crew members came from really underprivileged areas and had really rough lives. There were 2 crew members that I had. They were both teenage girls, and they each had boyfriends, and they thought that it was so romantic and like a Romeo and Juliet kind of thing because one of their boyfriends was in the Crips, the gang, the Crips, and one was in the Bloods. And here I was, this spoiled rich kid from the suburbs, like, what world have I walked into? But they thought it was really romantic because they couldn't double date because their boyfriends would kill each other. And I'm like, I really don't understand where I am. But one day, this this one crew member who was her boyfriend was in one of these gangs. She came into work and she was always so happy and such a bright joy. She would like juggle ice cream in front of people and joke with them and just brought so much joy to work. And on this day, she seemed really down. And so I called her in the back and I said, "Hey, what's going on? Like, why do you look so down?" We had a rule that you weren't allowed to come to work in a bad mood because if you're not allowed to work in food service when you have like the flu because it's contagious,
Right.
nothing. And I knew it then, and I could tell you with empirical evidence now, everything at work is contagious and bad moods are contagious. And so if you had a bad mood, if you were in a bad mood, just like if you had the flu, you got to call out. So I called her in the back and I'm like, "What are you doing? Why are you here?" Very sensitive back then. And she turned to me and I noticed that she literally had tears falling down her cheeks. And she told me that her boyfriend had been found, he had been shot multiple times and left for dead that morning. She had gotten a phone call. They had flown him to shock trauma on a medevac helicopter, and things didn't look good. I immediately told her to get out of the store, like go home, go be
Right.
with your friends, do whatever you need to do to process this stuff. Be alone if you need to, but why are you here? Don't come to work. And I knew, there's financial pressure and things like that. So I said, I will personally cover your shift and pay you for the day. Just go. And she kept cutting me off and saying, no, I can't. I need to be here. And finally she says, I can only be here this is my happy place.
Wow.
And I think what she meant beyond just being the place where she felt happy was I was this naive young business owner that dropped out of a bunch of my business classes at the time. And so I didn't know that you weren't supposed to trust a 16-year-old girl from the projects with a key to the place and make her a shift lead on her 16th birthday. Luckily, she was just as naive as I was and didn't know I wasn't supposed to trust her with that either. So she rose to that level of trust. I Every decision that had to be made, whether it was financial or marketing or about a promotion, I made it with my crew members. I asked them for their opinions. I gave them autonomy. I gave them voice. I gave them a sense of belonging. And I did all of this accidentally because I didn't know another world where I wouldn't, because they were, of course, as invested as I was. And so what her and her colleagues found was this place where they felt a sense of belonging and a sense of purpose. And outside of there, in school and at home, and when they would turn on the news and see their friends and family members being portrayed as violent and victims of violence, and they had family members in jail or that had been murdered, this was the escape of that, where they saw that they could have an impact on the world. We would say that these are our like 1,200 square feet of space in Baltimore City where we can make the city whatever we want it to be. And so that's what she meant at the
Yeah.
time. And for me, that moment was the same feeling that I had when my firstborn was born, my eldest, my son. And that was the moment that at once, in this one singular piece of moment in time, like I felt the weight of the world collapse on my shoulders. That wow, if this could be her happy place, if I could accidentally help co-create this for her, then it could also be the opposite. And it is the opposite for so many people. And how much power is there in that role as a father when my son was born, and as a business owner or manager, in that other world. And
Right.
it's like, and I've recognized how much pressure and how much relies on you. And so that was a fundamental turning point in my life.
That's what an incredible story. I mean, there's so much going on in that story, right? But the realization of the impact that you had, even when you didn't realize in the moment that you had this impact, whether that was in the ice cream shop or when your son was born, right? You realize that you are, yes, as the employer, you're responsible for your employees, and as the father, you're responsible for your child, to until they're of a certain age. But you kind of just roll with it. You don't think about that very frequently, I don't think, for most people, right? But the decisions that you make can have a much broader impact on a lot of people, more so than you expect. And you've told me that your mission is to make work better for everyone. That's kind of like your motto,
Mhm.
if I'm correct here. So you clearly, even if you weren't intentionally in the beginning doing it in the ice cream shop, like you were creating this space that turns out was their happy place, but also kind of a safe space for them to feel like they are contributing, right? That they are doing something positive while also earning money to support themselves, perhaps family, whatever it may be. What does that look like? Like you've done it, like you've set up making work better for people. What does that look like for dads trying to now build a meaningful career without losing themselves in their career?
Yeah, it's a really great question. And there's this for me, the natural question after coming to this realization, and I started being invited to speak and then train other organizations, and I'm like, you want me to help you with your accountants and your lawyer? Like, what? These are ice cream scoopers. But the fundamental question that was so intriguing, that to the point where it took my entire life and career on a sharp right turn, where I was this college dropout that then went back, got my master's degree, got my doctorate degree. Now I am a professor myself. But what the catalyst for that was not just what I was able to accidentally stumble into in the ice cream shop, but why wasn't this happening elsewhere? Why was the opposite helping that happening elsewhere? For instance, in other words, why were my crew members able to find meaning in scooping ice cream while people with objectively meaningful jobs, people that are nurses and doctors and teachers and lawyers and HR professionals, and why do they dread going to work on Monday?
Right.
And my crew members, I had to chase them away from the store because they would show up on their day off and try to help. And 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 that definitely wasn't in the budget. So I agree. But but what was the difference? Why it the question became less important to me. What was I able to do there? It, the bigger question was why were so many other people failing to do that?
Right.
And I think a huge piece of it is the idea that being able to give people autonomy and being able to give people a sense of meaning and purpose at work that is not unique to the sense of meaning and purpose in their life generally, right? Like a father shouldn't be one person at home and another person at work. There's
Right.
something, there's this legacy that you think about. There's this thing that makes you you. And if you don't know what that is, ask your spouse, ask your significant other, ask your best friend, ask your employees, ask your kids. Your kids will tell you and
Yep.
they'll be brutally honest. But find out what is that thing that makes you you, your essence, and that should not be different at home and at work.
Right.
Sure, you've got to be professional at work and family man at home, but the essence should be the same, and the mission should be the same. The impact should be the same.
I love that. But I also want to challenge you on that because you said that you stumbled upon this idea that you could create this space for your employees where it was, they were showing up on their days off, like it was that important to them. I'm not sure that you stumbled upon it. To me, that's like that is the essence of you, right? Like you set up that space. I don't think you intentionally were like, I'm going to make this the greatest place ever where every teenager is going to want to come here and, be here 7 days a week, right? You went into, I'm going to start this business. I'm going to make money. I'm going to support the community perhaps. And part of the supporting the community is I'm going to give jobs to local students and help them. I think your essence, of who you are, didn't make you stumble into this idea of creating this culture and this environment where your employees want to be there so often and they thrive and they find it to be their happy place. I think that's the essence of who you are, right? You didn't stumble into that. That was because of you and your values and your system. The same values that you probably carry as a father are the ones you were bringing to work. Now, granted, you might not have had your kids at that time, or maybe you did. I don't recall
Yeah.
the timeline,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
so it's like you are the same person. You might not have realized it in the moment, but I'm not sure that you stumble onto this. I think that's just who you are, right? That's what's come across to me in our conversations of like you are trying to create environments where the people you care about thrive, right? And I think you do that with your ice cream shop. I think you do that at home. Probably do that in the classroom too, right? And working with other organizations in whatever roles you might be helping them with. That is, you are a person that wants to create environments where somebody feels safe and they can thrive, right? But that's just, to me, that's who you are. It wasn't like, oh, I bet I can do this. It was, this is who I am. This is what I'm trying to set up. Does that make sense?
Yes, and
Yeah.
and I appreciate the compliment, and I think that you are right that there are elements to who I am that makes me driven toward that. That I tend to be a futurist, like a visionary, and I see the benefits of diverse collaboration and that we can all sort of work together and get the best outcomes, et cetera. And I think that a lot of that stuff Yeah, I think that that mixes in to be the perfect recipe. But I also would challenge. I'm not. I'm not just humble bragging when I say co-create, right? Because I don't
Yep.
talk about creating, talk about co-creating this. And part of it is the humble brag, sure. But in reality, these things need to be co-created. You
Yep.
need a partner. So if you are the leader, you need that partnership and that buy-in from your employees. And if you're the employee, you need that partnership and that buy-in from leadership. Right.
Right.
And so there is that essence. And with the work that I do within industry and helping people with burnout and helping people with work cultures and things like that, sometimes my answer is quit, find a new job, because
Right.
sometimes the environment is not the right environment.
Right.
But I would first tell somebody that you have way more power than you think that you do, right? I mean, you've seen this, I'm sure, with people that become transformed when they become moms or become dads.
Yeah.
Or sometimes it's when you're a parent and something really significant happens, and maybe with your health or the health of a child or a divorce or a job loss or COVID or something, where suddenly it's like you were hit over the head with a plank, and you suddenly rediscover and recommit who you are and what you have to give, right? And so you become this self-driven leader. I think one
Right.
of the fundamental misconceptions that we have with leadership generally is that leaders fall under, there's these frameworks that talk about power, and where does power and influence come from. And there's one form of power referred to as legitimate power. That's one form of power, and it is a real form of power, but it's a weak form of power. And that is the power that comes with your job title, right?
Right.
Where you are on the org chart. But
Yep.
referent power, being able to be the one who walks the walk and who just is with confidence, just brings yourself and decides, I'm not going to just be toxic because everybody else is toxic. I'm going to bring myself and bring my joy or humor or commitment or whatever it is that's your magic sauce to the table, and let that be contagious. Because remember, I said everything is contagious at work, not just the bad stuff.
Right.
Right. And so the power lays within you as well. So, and if you take a second to reflect, I'm sure that you could think of, and your listeners can think of, at least one boss that they had, somebody with an official title who held no actual power or influence.
Absolutely.
And likewise can think of at least one person that they've worked with in the past that had no official title but held an enormous amount of power and influence.
Right.
So why can't that be you?
Right.
So it starts with you. There's a common meme that goes around that I like to use, which is you can either be the thermometer or the thermostat. You can walk into the room and say, "Oh, it's toxic in here," and get a good read on that, and
Right.
then either join in or slowly back out of the room, or you could be the thermostat and set the temperature. It's not something that happens quickly,
Yep.
but it's something that happens over time, and it
Right.
starts with you.
Right. That I think that's the part that really sticks with me is the experience of it all, right? It is you don't know everything when you start. When you started your ice cream shop, right? You had an intent to build a successful ice cream store, I'm sure, and that you wanted to have employees that were happy, but you didn't know all the things, all the effects that that will have over time. But you start to learn and adapt based on your experience, and allows you to become more of the person you want to be, to seek out the moments that make you happy. You start to learn what you like and what you don't like in your jobs, right? Like my first job out of college, I worked for a major bank in their internet group. This is in the nascent days of internet banking. And I was helping them build their first internet banking website. And I was bored. I was absolutely like, there is, I want to be challenged. Like, I want more work. I was asking for more work every day. And I was getting nothing, right? They're just like, yeah, because they outsource a lot of the actual work to consultants. Right.
Right.
And we were just a team to kind of just manage them. It's like, well, there's only so much I need to do if they're doing everything themselves. So about 3 or 4 months into it, I went back and talked to one of my old professors and I said, I am really bored at work. What should I do? And she said to me, pay attention to what you don't like right now, because someday you're going to be in a different environment and you're going to want to know, you're going to have to choose how to run it. You're going to want to know what not to do. Right.
Oh,
So think of the things you don't like now. Remember that, because down the road, you can make sure that nobody else has to go through that in your environment. Right.
love that.
Don't know that until you experience it. Right. You don't know what you don't like, you, what doesn't work for you, but you evolve over time. Right. And so I think part of what you're saying is that you can choose to what direction you want to go. You can choose where you want to be, what kind of, if you're not happy in your job, maybe you have to choose to quit. Maybe you don't. Maybe you have to make adjustments, right? But it's your choice. Right? Yes, you have to earn a living at the end of the day, right? Most people don't have, will need the money to support themselves, their families, right? But within that, there are still choices that you can make. And I think, and part of that is you don't know what the right choices are until you've had some of those experiences,
Yeah. Yep.
right?
Yeah.
And then
I love that perspective.
you start
That
to learn and adapt based on those experiences.
Yes, yeah, that's one of the things I work on with my students as their IO psychology, industrial organizational psychology graduate students, and I tell them, like, when you're in this program and you're at work and toxic things are happening or horrible change initiatives are not working at all, like, that is such a cool experience to be in it and able to study it from inside. And that little flip of that switch, that little change in perspective really changes. I'm no longer a victim of this. I'm a scientist discovering this, and whether it's IO psychology or just discovering, like you said, what works for you. But there's a interesting challenge that I used to do that you just reminded me of. I haven't thought about this in years, actually. I used to do it for myself all the time, and I would bring my kids in on it. And also back in my ice cream shop days, it was an onboarding exercise. We would do this. So our store, our ice cream shop was very close to a Safeway grocery store,
Sure.
and not throwing Safeway under the bus or grocery stores generally, but it just happened to be if you wanted to see somebody feeling just like miserably at their job, go like check out at Safeway, right? At this specific Safeway at that specific time. And so I would go through the line. I would take my kid through the line. I would, as part of our onboarding, have our new crew members go through the line to get something. And their challenge was to get that person at the register to smile before you get through. It's such an interesting challenge. And when you could do that, and when you challenge yourself with things like that again and again, you realize the power that you have. It's
Right.
not just the curmudgeons and the toxic bosses and things like that that have the power to influence people. You have the
Right.
power to influence people.
Right. And you have the power, you control your environment,
Yes.
right? You can choose, I talk to a lot of people like complaining that, oh, I hate my job or I hate my boss, right? Like that's the common one. My boss is an idiot. I don't like anything
Mhm.
my boss does, right? Okay. You know, you only have so much time in the day. Are you going to choose to complain about your boss, do something about your job, or figure out a way to work within that in a way that makes you still flourish,
Yes.
right?
What's in your control? What
Right. What's in your control, right? You can't control what other people do. You can only control
Mhm.
what is
Right.
what you do, what you choose, and right? It's a framework or it's a mindset
Mhm.
question at the end of the day. Is like, are you going to choose the positive route, the negative route, or somewhere in between, right? And it's like, how do you take advantage of that situation? Okay, I'm in a job that I don't like, I'm bored at, or I don't like my boss, or it's just a toxic work environment. We've got people just don't have respect for each other. It's like, okay, what am I going to do? Well, one option is leave that job, go find something else, right? Another option is to address that situation in a myriad of different ways, I suppose. Another one's just to ignore it and just keep letting it go, right?
Right.
But you have to choose what you want to do. But again, it's like you're choosing your own happy level of happiness,
Right, right, right.
right?
And that choice, which is a real choice that you are actively making, the choice to do nothing is the most toxic of the choices because at the very least you need to exercise your own autonomy. and
Right.
recognize that you are in control. It, you know, there's this idea of like your locus of control. Like when things happen to me, do they
Yeah.
happen to me or am I part of it? Do I have an external locus of control where I blame everything outside of me for everything that goes badly in my life? Or do I take personal responsibility? Understanding, yes, there's always factors outside,
Right.
but I need to take personal responsibility. What could I have done in those situations? My kids constantly come home from school and complain about their teachers. And we have had this conversation again and again and again and again. I remind them that they are living in a world with AI, chat GPT right on your phone. If your teacher sucks as a teacher, chat GPT doesn't. It can
Right.
teach you. And by the way, you're obsessed with like, my girls are obsessed with Wicked. My eldest son is obsessed with Marvel, the MCU and stuff. It's
Sure.
like you can ask ChatGPT, teach me this chemical formula or this biological concept, but use like the framework of the MCU and
Right.
or teach me governments, but use the different characters in the MCU to describe these things. And like you could teach yourself. When we were going to school, we had our teacher and the 20-year-old textbook. You
Right.
know, like
Yep.
like you really do have power now. Everybody's got a phone. They've got the power. And so, but when you don't take control, what they say when somebody is suffering from depression, one of the best things that you can do is get out of your house and walk around the block. Taking control of something,
Right.
just walking around the block, but taking control of something starts to turn everything. And I've had people in the past where they just cannot take personal responsibility for things. And it's so toxic. And in a business environment, I've recommended to clients and things before to terminate people's jobs, which I'm very reluctant to do. But one of the sort of red lines that I run into where I'm like, this person is not coachable is if nothing is their fault. If they never take personal responsibility for anything,
Right.
then they're not coachable. They don't have a growth mindset. They can't grow at this point.
Right.
I try to give them a million options and a million chances, but at some point that's where you've got to draw the line.
Yeah. So you mentioned autonomy, right? And taking control of the situation that you're in. So a lot of dads that I talk to, they want to be fully, I'll call it alive at work, right? They want to do work that means something to them,
Yeah.
right? They don't want to just have a regular old 9 to 5. Some are fine with that, like it just pays the bills and that's fine. But some want to do something that is meaningful to them. And that can look any which way for everybody, it's different,
Right.
right? Some people want to run their own businesses. Some want to work for big corporations. Some want to do philanthropy type work, whatever it may be. But they also want to be fully present at home, right? They want to be active in their families' lives. They want to be with the people they care about. How do dads that are trying to do both do meaningful work, also be active and present at home? How do they take autonomy to like what is the first step that they should take in your mind?
Yeah, I think you've got to really understand the impact that you want to have. What do you want people to say at your funeral? What like think about your own eulogy.
Yeah.
What is your essence? What do you want people to talk about? And be that person at home and at work. But the problem is you don't have to choose one or the other, but there's different ways to be fully passionate about your work. So my research is in passion decline, what happens when you fall out of love with work. And what's really, really interesting is the most popular framework around understanding passion is that there's a healthy, adaptive form of passion and
Yeah.
a less healthy, more maladaptive form of passion, where in both situations, your work lights a fire in you. It's embedded in your identity, and it's part of you, and you really put everything into it, right? In one scenario, if you're harmoniously passionate, then at the end of the day, you're still able to close your laptop and go about the rest of your day and go
Right.
home without the guilt, without the shame. If you're obsessively passionate, that doesn't happen. It's so hard to move on. And The difference is how integrated into your general identity the things are. If I am doing the same kind of superhero work at work as I am at home, because I'm using my gifts that make me uniquely me and my skills that make me uniquely me at home and at work, and they're the same skills, and I'm trying to have the same sort of impact, whatever that impact is, mm, then that's harmonious, and it's going to be a lot better integrated into my sense of identity. So my wife has gone through times when she has been, and it was very interesting because as I was researching, passion and becoming this sort of expert in passion, it was like, whoa, there's a red flag. There's a red flag. If my wife would get mad at me, but things have changed because we really talk through these things.
Right.
Um, she used to sit on the bed with with our kids and rub their back for bedtime while feeling complete anxiety and and shame and a form of guilt that she wasn't sending out these emails for work. And she was a grade school teacher. She was she wasn't a stockbroker on the New York Stock Exchange. Like she was a grade school teacher. So it doesn't matter what you do. We create these narratives in our mind, but
Right.
but that guilt was so real for her. And
Yep.
so she felt guilty when she was rubbing the kids to sleep, but she also felt guilty when she was down at the computer and she knew she should be with the kids. And
Right.
and so if you feel that, that's the litmus test. If you
Yep.
feel that sort of tension to that degree, then you're probably experiencing a less healthy form of passion. If you're lucky, if you're unlucky, then it's workaholism, which is
Right.
more not, passion, even if it's a less adaptive form of passion, is still running towards something, the work or whatever it is, right? Workaholism is it's like alcoholism, it's like any addiction, it's running from something typically, and then you really need to work that out. But that's sort of the litmus test, and you've got to figure out what it is that's driving you toward your work if you are seeing this tension, because at the end of the day, people that have harmonious passion put in are just as productive, if not more productive, than those with obsessive passion. Yet people who are obsessively passionate spend more hours on their work. So they're there more, but being as productive, maybe, certainly more typically less productive while putting in more hours. Like the world does not come to an end because you close the laptop and say, I'll be back at 9 o'clock tomorrow.
Right. Right. It's so interesting to me that you point out that passion in general, your passions tend to be positive feelings, right? You're passionate about things that you enjoy, right? But at the same time, that can there is a limit to that, right? Where your passion can go past that limit and then it becomes turns into almost this in your wife's case, like a feeling of guilt,
Yep.
right? Or there's some sort of negative experience that comes along with that passion, right? Now you're sacrificing something else because you might be passionate about both your family and your job, but you have to find that the right alignment or the right balance between those two. Because if you let one overtake the other, like in your wife's case, it was like, oh, I feel really guilty about not sending these emails out or not getting those grades in or whatever during what she would normally consider family time, right?
Right.
It's interesting because, like, usually when we talk about meaningful work or what we're passionate about, we're talking about it in the positive sense,
Mhm.
right? But we have to be careful not to let that passion overtake us,
Yeah.
right? There is an unhealthy level or an unsafe level of passion that you can get to that, right, can start to cause a rift between what you're trying to accomplish to what you're actually doing.
Yeah, and I mean, looking back at philosophy, before we studied passion much more recently as a psychological construct, philosophically, you can look and there were philosophers who talked about passion as the most beautiful thing ever, the thing that drives you, that motivates you, and also have talked about passion as the most evil thing ever. The
Right.
thing that distracts you from productivity and from a good life. I mean,
Right.
people have passions for all sorts of things that are not healthy for them. Now, one of the very first studies on passion, looking in this dualistic model where there's the harmonious passion versus obsessive passion, looked at cycling clubs in Canada, and they they looked at cyclists and cycling clubs where they took a break over the winter and where they didn't. And if you're not taking a break from cycling in Canada over the winter, I mean, obviously these people experience higher injuries and things like that. And
Right.
and it's like that's not necessarily super healthy. But if you
Right.
can put the break in and let the season and taking a season off is actually going to help drive that passion. You're going to come back to it reinvigorated at the other side. I think that that's really, really important.
Right. Yeah, I see that a lot, like in youth sports, right? Like the
Mm,
younger they are, they say, try as many different sports as you can,
right.
take a break, and do different sports in different seasons. But then there's also a lot of kids, probably because their parents think, oh, my kid's going to be is the best, he's going to be professional, or he's going to get a scholarship, whatever, right? So I'm going to put him in this activity, this sport for you know all year long, 12 months a year, and like there's no break, right? And my daughter, when she was doing competitive dancing, she was dancing 11 out of the 12 months of the year. It was a little much, but there were some seasons where there was less dance than others, right? But you can get yourself to the point of like too much of the same activity, even if it is like your number one passion, right?
Yeah.
Like you have to live a somewhat well-rounded day-to-day life. Like you can't just do the same thing every day. Otherwise it's eventually probably going to get monotonous, or as you said, like your passion may dissipate as a result of that. So I'm kind of curious, I know with your wife, like she had this sense of guilt or this feeling of guilt. Are there, is that the typical kind of early warning sign if you're starting to fall out of love with your work? Or is there other warning signs that we should be aware of as we, continue our work of like, yeah, maybe I'm starting to not enjoy this as much, or maybe it's time to think about what I want to do next?
Yeah. One of the most interesting things that came out of my research was that the thing happens over time. It's not like you snap a finger and
Right.
suddenly you wake up one day and you don't love your work anymore. Some of my respondents like claim that that happened, but then we work through it. My research, for anybody that this means something to, is phenomenological, which means like you get to actually question, your participants and dig deeper. And just because they say something is the truth doesn't mean you don't push back on that a little bit
Right.
and help interpret it. But what was interesting is even those that thought like, yeah, it just happened one day, one of my participants talked about how passionate he was about his work forever. And he rarely took vacations. Then when he did take a vacation, he would never turn off his phone. Like he'd always be available and stuff. And one vacation, he turned off his phone. He's like, you know what? Screw it. And he turned off his phone and put it away and said, I'm not available. And when he got back to work after that, the passion was gone and it never returned. And so I'm like, on first glance, it sounds like, wow, that happened really quickly. Like it was just this one moment and it knocked you out. But then it begs the question, why did you turn off your phone? If for years you never turned off your phone, something must have made you turn off your phone. And so
Right.
when we started moving backwards, we found that work had started to feel like it was going stagnant for him for quite a while. And so this is actually building for a while before the crescendo where he turns off his phone and then he comes back and feels like this came out of nowhere, right? But it didn't when it was under the microscope. So these things do take a while, which makes a lot of sense because they are part of your identity. People who lose their passion for work, if they're truly passionate about their work and then they start to lose it, they literally go through a bit of an identity crisis. And whereas they are screaming for help, and maybe they're not actually asking for help, it's all inside.
Right.
But for some, because some people don't feel the safety to ask for help, and it also feels very much like somebody who is like a star player. Typically, they would be right. They'd be a high potential, high performing employee. if they're so passionate about their work. And so when it starts going, there's the shame already from this separation or from this movement. But a lot of my participants did speak up and they said, I want more responsibility. They said, I don't know why this is wrong or this is wrong. Let me help fix this. Why do we do it this way? What's happening? And over time, it like their passion started going away because they either weren't answered at all or the answers were performative. It was like, oh, you want more? Let me put you on this committee that doesn't actually do anything. Right.
Yeah.
So now it's just like throwing fake solutions at them. But that was it. But typically what you saw from the outside was that this person was so focused on their mission, their work, the impact that it was having on their clients, their patients, their students, their customers. And then as they started to plateau because they for a lot of them they just hit this plateau where there wasn't much like they had mastered it and they needed to continue growing. It's kind of like you were saying, feeling bored at the bank, right?
Right.
And so they started plateauing and they started searching for more things. So now the focus moves from here to the more general around them. And
Yeah.
once that happens, they start seeing all of the bureaucracy and the interpersonal conflict and things like that, that when they had this tunnel vision on their mission, they couldn't even see. And all this stuff is so toxic that once they see it, they can't unsee it. And it just starts to unwind.
Interesting. So then, if I understand you correctly, right, there's not like a specific sign, warning sign or something that you see. It's more of a gradual path that you go down where little things start to add up and it starts to almost snowball to a point of like, oh yeah, maybe I'm starting to lose passion for this, right? Like it's not as enjoyable as it once was. And a lot of the times it's things that are not necessarily the things that you control, right? It might be the responses you're getting from clients, or it might
Right.
be your coworkers and how they behave or respond to you, right? Sometimes it is what you control. Like, yeah, I'm gonna turn off my phone and realize that, oh, wow, like there is life beyond my
Yep.
job, right?
Right.
Right. But this is not something that like you said, it's not going to happen in an instant, right? It's over time. So the warning signs are not. It's hard to say like there's a specific warning sign that you're starting to lose passion for your work, but it's a feeling that gradually builds.
Yeah, which is again, not to bring up guilt and shame again, but there is this feeling of guilt associated with it. Like, what's wrong with me? How come
Right.
I'm not feeling the fire anymore? And the best thing that you can do as an individual is to talk about it. But the thing behind that feeling is like depends on what was the driver of your passion to begin with. For a
Right.
lot of people, growth is the drive of their like the thing that drives their passion. For a lot of people, it's things that are more mission focused. And then for a lot of people, and this is actually sort of growth and mission and things like that, those typically align really well with the healthier form of passion, the harmonious passion. But a lot of people, their passion is driven by a sense that you need to prove something, either to yourself or to somebody else. Your ego is so fragile and tied into your performance on this job, and that creates the passion to push forward. And so if that's the drive of passion, then you end up overextending yourself, volunteering for everything, doing everything, and then you start to feel like you're burning out,
Right.
and you start feeling exhausted. You start feeling like a bit of cynicism. And then you start feeling this sense of reduced personal accomplishment, whether real or imagined. You start thinking, I'm not really having an impact. And those are all signs of burnout. But burnout is sort of like that catalyst, oftentimes, especially when you have that maladaptive form of passion. It's that catalyst that leads to the much longer term, much more severe passion decline.
Interesting. I feel very seen in what you just said. Like I feel like I've gone through a lot of that,
Yeah.
those emotions over the years, right? And and starting running my own businesses, and it's just like, yeah, that's exactly it. Like, you are like my corporate therapist, right? It's like you've just seen me
Welcome
explain
to
me
IO
exactly.
psychology. I explain to people that don't know what it is. I say it's like if your HR director and your therapist had a baby, that would be me.
That's a perfect metaphor. All right. So one last question before we jump into the speed round. I'm curious if someone is listening that realizes that their passion for work and their family life are out of sync. What's the kind of the first honest question they should ask themselves?
I think one is what's driving me. Because, like we just said, if what's actually driving you is this imposter syndrome, is this need to prove yourself, is this need to make other people happy and proud of you and to make other people see your value,
Yeah.
then that's the first thing you have to understand and then work on. Because and for that, you probably should see a different type of psychologist because they can help you really work through those elements.
Sure.
And that's the pass off. That's where I would
Yeah.
pass you off to them and
Yeah.
say, "All right, pass back when this is being worked on." Right?
Right.
But that's a big thing to make sure that it's not about the ego and this self-esteem, these self-esteem issues. The other thing is to not overly identify with the corporation or the job title, the job role that you're in. And instead of that, identify with the work that you do, with the impact that you have. And that's a mindset shift sort of thing. Just sort
Yes.
of get back to the basics of what you do and it doesn't matter where you do it or how you do it. Like you said before, I do the same things at home as I did in my ice cream shop, as I do as a professor, as I do with my clients. And so get back in touch with those things and the impacts that you have. And again, if you need a reminder of the impacts that you're having or somebody to open your eyes, ask people. They
Yeah.
will tell you.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's so interesting. I love how you talk about impacts because, like, in sales, they say, you're not selling the benefits, you're selling the outcome,
Yeah.
right? And it's essentially the same thing with your work and with your home life. Like, what impact are you making? What outcomes are you driving towards?
Yeah.
Right. And like you said, if that outcome is to, I just want to impress other people,
Right.
that's one issue. If the outcomes you're trying to drive to are things that are meaningful to you, well, then you're probably heading down the right road in terms of doing what is passionate to you. Right. And you've got to just answer that for yourself clearly. But I just love how you frame that as looking at those impacts, right?
Mhm.
Or as I look at them as outcomes, like that you're trying to drive towards.
Yeah.
Um, that's so interesting. All right, this is great and really, it's got my mind thinking in a million different directions. But I want to totally shift things here and go into our speed round, which has nothing to do with anything.
Sure.
5 quick questions. So if you're ready, the first one is: what's the first kid show theme song that comes to mind?
Oh, that's a hard one. So the one I rock out to, Dinosaur Train,
Oh,
Dinosaur
wow.
Train. You know that one?
I think so. Yeah.
It's like the Dinosaur Train, I think is the name of the show. It's great. Love it.
What was it called? Dinosaur Train? I couldn't remember.
I think so. That's definitely
Okay.
the song.
Right.
And the show was literally about dinosaurs on a train. You couldn't
Right.
get a better show.
Awesome. Love that. What was your very first job?
So my very first job was cleaning up poop in a kennel.
Wow. It's a tough first job.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Would you rather spend 24 hours with a toddler-sized T-Rex or a T-Rex-sized toddler?
Oh, I would definitely do the toddler-sized T-Rex.
Why is that?
Sounds cute, and my first job being cleaning up poop, I couldn't even fathom a T-Rex sized toddler.
Fair point. Very fair point. What's your go-to karaoke song?
Oh, my go-to karaoke song would probably be the Fresh Prince song in West Philadelphia, but
Yes.
only because it is literally the only song that I know every word to.
I don't fault you for that one bit. That's probably one of the very few songs I know all the words to also. And that's a great choice for karaoke.
Yeah.
All right, last one. What's the weirdest thing you've ever carried around in your bag, briefcase, or pockets?
All right, so I hope this doesn't make me sound creepy because I felt creepy in the moment. So we were doing a Cold Stone catering event at a school, and
Okay.
I had washed the like tablecloth and stuff in my home washing machine. And so we're standing in this elementary school, and it's me and my crew members, and we take the tablecloth out and lay it down on the table and go like this. And a pair of, she was probably like 5 at the time, my 5-year-old daughter's panties came flying out into the air. And I'm like, oh my God. So I grabbed them and shoved them in my pocket. And the rest of the day that we're carrying for like 2 hours, I'm thinking, I've got little girl panties in my pocket while working in an elementary school. This is not going to end well. So yeah, so I felt
Oh,
like a creep, but I promise I'm not.
wow. Uh,
Ever
I
get
have
that
not.
answer before?
I have not. There are very few answers that have left me speechless. Well done.
God,
Well done,
thank you,
David.
thank you.
That was wow, impressive. I think I don't even know what the
I
right.
don't know if it's impressive.
Yeah, I mean, you got through it, so I
Yeah,
get. I mean,
yeah.
that part is impressive. I'm not sure what I would have
I
done.
was just horrified they were gonna somehow fall out of my pocket and I was gonna end up in jail. That's
Yeah, that's wow. Wow is all I can say. I mean,
yeah.
that is really tough to follow anything up with. Before we wrap up,
Yeah. So if you're looking for an IO consultant, call me. I promise no underwear in my pocket.
well, that's a good thing. Before we wrap up, I do want to make sure that people know where they can go next if what we talked about today resonated with them. Where can people learn more about you and your work?
Sure. So my website's a great place to start. It's www.davidshar.com. That's one of my websites. And then LinkedIn. I'm very active on LinkedIn. Love to have conversations on there. So if somebody just wants to continue the conversation, maybe not about the last story you shared, but about anything else I'm open to talk about, they can find me on LinkedIn.
Awesome. I'll put those in the show notes for sure. And David, I really appreciate you joining me today. This conversation is fascinating to me. It just blew by so fast. Your research and the way that you kind of put these real world experiences into things that feel human, not theoretical. Like usually when I hear about research, it's like it's hard for me to relate to, right? It doesn't feel that human. It feels like something I read in a textbook.
Yeah.
I think as you talked today, it was like, yeah, that is so relatable. So I really appreciate how practical and grounded
Thank you.
you are and how you've talked about everything today. And as a dad navigating this yourself, I think this perspective carries a lot of weight. So thank you again for being here. I appreciate it. And finally, before you go, if you're a dad listening to this and you find yourself in between navigating the season that feels different, head to gap2gig.com, subscribe to the Gap to Gig newsletter. It comes out every Friday. It's a quieter space to reflect on work, life, and what really matters right now. And if this conversation resonated, consider sending it to another dad who might need to hear it. Until next time, I'm Michael Jacobs. Thanks for showing up and listening to Gap to Gig.